And now on ChinnyVision 1, it's time to go over to Ramsey Street to meet the Neighbours. Neighbours is an Australian soap opera. Yes, it is still going. That came as a surprise to me as well. Started off just being shown at lunchtimes in the mid-1980s in the UK. Expanded into an early evening showing at 5:35. At one point at its peak in the late 80s, early 90s, was regularly picking up viewerships of over 20 million people per day. To put that in context, the population of the UK at the time was about 50 million people. The show was created by Reg Watson, and this is a fact that's forgotten. Reg was the original producer on Crossroads in the UK in the 1960s, a native Australian. He set up Crossroads, returned to Australia in the mid-70s, I believe, and he created a whole load of shows over there, ran them, and he created Neighbours. And Neighbours borrows a lot of elements from Crossroads. Anyway, it's a 5-day-a-week pot-boiler soap opera. So in the UK, Neighbours was so popular that, of course, it was a natural for things to break out of the show. This has always happened with soap operas, and Neighbours had people like Kylie Minogue break out of the show to have their own pop careers. Craig McLachlan, Jason Donovan, Holly Valance was another one, but I think that was the 2000s. Lots and lots of people, stage school kids, go into Neighbours, become famous or end up in a ditch. And of course, therefore, a computer game is a perfectly valid breakout medium. And Zeppelin licensed Neighbours. But they didn't license any of the characters. Well, they licensed the characters, but not their likenesses. So what we have here is artwork for the game with no mention of any of these characters on the box. And I believe as well, all the characters we're going to see in the game had pretty much left by the time the game was released. Impulse is a label of Zeppelin, and this is a full-price game that went out on the Amiga at $25.99 and on the 8-bits at $10.99 for tape and $15.99 for disc. So we're going to start off here on the Sinclair Spectrum. Interestingly, the game is licensed from BBC Enterprises and not the Grundy organisation who created and made the show. Might be why there's none of the actual characters on the artwork. So there's a race on Ramsey Street and you have to compete against other people in the neighbourhood. You are Scott Robinson, Jason Donovan, and you have your skateboard. Apparently this is based on an actual plot in an episode. And you're racing against, he consults his notes. Yes, I've had to make notes today. Charlene, Kylie Minogue, Henry, Craig McLachlan, Mike, vaguely remember him, Matt Robinson, yeah. And you go around Ramsey Street, Laster's Complex, Erinsborough High, and Anson's, perhaps Lisa L. Anson's Corner, that's it, Commodore 64. And we get a funkified version of the Neighbours theme. Even worse than that jazzed up version they did in the 90s. So here we go, we get to select who we're racing against on the C64. Lenny is actually Charlene. It's confusing, it's some plot thing that she was preferred to be called Lenny, not Charlene. And on the C64, yeah, you get to select how many people you're racing against and which skateboard you want. So you have to go through the cones, avoid people there. I think that was Mrs. Mangle. You hit things, and there's kangaroos on the loose because Australia, clearly. That's Bouncer the dog. You've got to avoid him. There's an ostrich or emu on the loose as well because, you know, let's stereotype Australia again. Why not? It's budget fare, really, isn't it? It's budget fare. It's somehow they've managed to squeeze out a budget quality game at full price. And there's no music as we go around, just beeps, like it's a game from 1983, not 1991. And you must go through all of the cones or you won't win. I've won. Fantastic, Scott. You came third in the Ramsey Street race. I am cheating, by the way. And here we are on the Amiga, and look at the view of Ramsey Street there, and presumably that's supposed to be Jason Donovan giving us the thumbs up. 16-bit versions have one more character. They have Bronwyn, who I vaguely remember the name. I didn't watch it. It was always on in the house, clearly, but I never watched it. That's not, no, I'm thinking of Plain Jane Superbrain, aren't I? So, Charlene is actually called Charlene in this version. You know, because we wouldn't want to confuse the people playing the game, would they? Would we? And I've accidentally only selected it, so I'm racing against Charlene. So we do have some Kylie and Jason action. If you're in the USA, you're not going to know... You know all about Kylie Minogue, but her on-screen boyfriend, then husband, and actually real-life partner for a while, was a guy called Jason Donovan, who was UK Christmas #1, 1989, I think it was. They duetted, especially for you. So, ST version. And just to make sure we know we're in Australia, the icon is Australian map. So it's pretty much like the Amiga version. You do have to pick up litter and... Oh no, you have to avoid litter and pick up sweets to get energy. The controls are horrible, everything's horrible. You've paid 26 quid for this. £26 for this game. With horrible controls, basic graphics... The remote control is apparently a car is apparently a plot point. Oh, it's in the titles. It's in the titles at one stage. A character has a remote control car. That's Mrs. Mangle, who I remember from the Sullivans. That's apparently Des Clark's car. Apparently he's driving to work, although he only ever seems to drive in and out of it. There he is again. Why is he in two places at once? And why is he going back and forth? It's like... It reminds you of Paperboy, but no fun, basically. Over to the Spectrum, this is the second race. I think it's the Lassiter's complex. Quite why there's lines all over the road. I don't know, it makes you think the game's corrupted loading, but I don't think it has. Oh, someone's catching up with me. Oh, am I going to win? There we go. Yep. And you get very bad pictures of the characters on the left-hand side that seem to look nothing like the YouTube videos I've watched of old episodes in having to research this. Neighbours was dreadful. It was inexplicably popular. Absolutely inexplicably popular. Cheap as... I could criticise it all day. The appalling quality of the OB cameras used for the outside work, making everything look washed out. Terrible acting, the poor sets. But it was incredibly popular. There is no accounting for taste. And it's still going. That doesn't get anywhere near the viewers it used to. I think it's like 2 million a day or something now. So a tenth of what it was getting at its peak. Your Sinclair, who usually had better judgment on these things, despite giving it 81%, James Leach still manages to sum up the game saying, it's a bit crap. James, is it an 81% game or is it a bit crap? Make up your mind. It got re-released on budget the same year at $3.99, which pretty much tells you how well it sold. C64 version. There's Bounce the Dog. Mrs. Mangle again. I mean, if you're going to have the characters in the game, Mrs. Mangle again, why have them repeat like 3 times? Why not have different characters? Here we are on the Amiga. Oh, that painting is a reference to something as well. Wasn't it a painting of Mrs. Mangle that someone did? That's Howard Bishop. That's he was in it for years, wasn't he? Oh, this is terrible. It's uncontrollable rubbish. The Amiga version is by the same crack coding team that gave you Ed the Duck on the same format. The only review I could find was Amiga format, which gave it 24%. ST version. Graphically, it's the same as the Amiga version, but it doesn't have the scrolling. That's about it. It does have the sampled sounds, but it's terrible. It's so bad. If they put this out purely as a budget game, you'd tolerate it more. By the way, I can't get off level 1 on the ST and the Amiga. The game's so terrible that none of the trained versions I've downloaded for either format actually work when you run the trainers. It's nuts, and the game's controls are so bad that I just gave up. Neighbours is the very definition of a cynical, poorly made cash-in of a TV show. The most you've got is some poor caricatures of some of the characters, all of which I believe had left by the time the game came out, or at least most of which had left. All the versions are insultingly poor. 16 bits, £26 for this. £26. As a budget game, you might cut it some slack, but frankly, not much, because it really is that bad. But I don't think I need to say any more other than, goodness me, £26. The Spectrum version, again, is the kind of thing you picked up on a second-tier budget label like Players for $2.99, and the game was quickly shoved onto the Zeppelin budget label in the same year it was released. The graphics look like a game from years before, and I can't believe Your Sinclair gave it 81%. Crash were pretty unreliable by this era, but they called the game out for what it was and gave it 42%. C64 version, no music. The graphics look like a game from 1985. It's only spot effects. Again, the entire thing is laughable. Presumably Impulse/Zeppelin were hoping that the name Neighbours on the cover would sell lots of copies of the game just on its own, and it may well have done, but this is cynical, nasty stuff. Poor quality, purely put together to exploit the name of the show over any kind of quality in the game. Neighbours, the TV show, may have had plenty to criticise about it. Cheap, pot boiler, 5-night-a-week soap opera just designed to fill a slot. But it was popular, and the viewers liked it, especially in the UK, where it offered a little bit of sunshine and happiness in the grey and depressing British winter. However, this game doesn't give you any of that. It is cheap, it is nasty. You could have any number of budget games using a similar format that do this thing so much better. Shamefully put together, cynical rubbish. And thank you to the guys at Isolation Creations who allowed me to use their superb Neighbours parody video. Check them out. They've got a link in the description below. They've parodied all sorts of TV show titles during lockdown. Absolutely brilliant. The Crossroads one had tears in my eyes. Amy Turtle, just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.